big thing that I wish I had known is just because you're not the smartest or one of the smartest, that doesn't mean you're a failure. Hi there and welcome to Miss Estruch Biology. In this video I'm going to go through just some of the things that I really wish I knew before I went to university, and I've narrowed it down to my top 10 things that I wish someone had told me and I'd listened to before I went to university. So let's get started. If you do want to skip ahead to any of the points or just get a preview, have a look along the bottom at the time codes and you can jump right into it. My first tip links to the teaching style. Now you're probably quite aware that the degree will be mainly based around lectures, and depending what subject you do, you might actually have more seminars, which are more like smaller classroom lessons. You'll have some really small tutorials with your tutor. But for me anyway, for biology, most of my learning was through lectures. And for my lectures, there were 90 to 150 students in every lecture pretty much, especially in first year. And going from having between 5 and 16 in a class in A level to about 90 to 150, I did find quite a big shock. The other thing that I found a big shock was the complete change in teaching style, because lectures are just a specialist at the front talking through a PowerPoint, and for me that was anywhere between 1 and 3 hours of just them stood at the front talking at you. That's right, just talking at you. No questions, no engagement, no interaction, just them talking at you for that long. Now that might not be the same at every university, it might have changed now, but that's what my experience was, and I found that really hard because number one, I would find I started daydreaming after about 15 to 20 minutes if there was no interaction like you would have in a lesson at school. I found it was a really fast pace, and although we were given printouts of the PowerPoints and you could follow those, I'd sometimes drift off for maybe 10 seconds and then come back and have no clue where I was, or I just wouldn't understand what was going on at that particular point in time, and you couldn't really stop and ask someone around you because then they would fall behind. So I did find that change in teaching style a big shock. And what I wish I had have done to counteract this is, first of all, I think you can now access the PowerPoint in advance of your lectures. So it would have been a good idea to get hold of those, read through them in advance, so I had a bit of an idea before I started, but also not be afraid to go and talk to the lecturer, because I had in my head that I just absolutely could not go and speak to them. I don't know if it was just I was afraid that it'd make me look like I shouldn't be there or I wasn't as smart as everyone else, or if I just didn't really know if you were allowed to do that or not. But in hindsight, they're just a person there to try and teach you. So of course, if you've got a question, go up and ask them at the end. I'm sure they'll actually be pleased to know that you were paying attention and you actually have questions for them. So that would be a really big thing. Now, linked to this as well, there is nowhere near as much accountability as there is at A level. Now, as a teacher, if you haven't done your homework, I'll be chasing you for it and I'll be having words with you. At university, that's very different. You timestamp your work, hand it in, and that is that. And if you don't hand it in, the lecturer doesn't care. They're not going to come and tell you off. All that means is you get a 0% and you might fail the year, and then you'd have to pay another 9,000 to resit the year. Now, the next thing is, when you go to university, you need to remember you are now in a situation where everyone has chosen to be there. They've all had to get really high grades, probably, depending on the course you've gone for, to get to that location to be studying that. So you are probably not going to be the smartest person anymore. And you might be thinking, that's fine by me, I never was the smartest person, but there will be some of you sat there who know that they are the smartest in their class, or at least ranking at the top. And it's a pretty good feeling if you know you're always the one that gets the questions right, you always understand what's going on. You will go to university and have a shock, because suddenly you are surrounded by everyone who is just like you, if not maybe a bit smarter. And that can be a bit of a knock to the ego. But that's fine. You don't have to be the smartest person there. You just have to work your hardest, put in the effort, and you will still get a good grade. Leading on from this, the big thing that I wish I had known is, just because you're not the smartest or one of the smartest, that doesn't mean you're a failure. If you don't know things that someone else does, that's okay. It doesn't mean you're stupid. And this is one thing I found really hard. There was one person in particular. I'm going to give as little details as possible because I want them to remain anonymous. But this person made me feel like crap, particularly at the start. And I did go from being one of the top of my class to suddenly feeling like I really wasn't good enough. And they just seemed to know loads about experiments that I just either couldn't remember or I'd never learned. And the way they were always like, oh, do you not know that? Really made me feel rubbish. And I then thought, oh, I don't know if I'm smart enough to be here. How does everyone know so much more than me? And it really did get me down. And I shouldn't have let that affect me. And that's why I want to say to you, if anyone does make you feel like that, just remember, you aren't coming to university to already know everything, because then there'd be no point you being there. You are coming to university to learn. So if there's something that they know that you don't, then great, you've learned something from them and you'll continue to learn the whole way through the course. So do not feel embarrassed or like you aren't good enough if you don't know everything at the start, because you won't know everything and there will be people better than you. Doesn't mean you're not good enough. Thinking more about now the social side. People told me this before I went, but I don't think I fully appreciated it until I experienced it. And that was, you do not have to be friends with the people that live on your corridor if you are in halls of residence. Or if you're in a flat, you don't have to be friends with the people in your flat. Don't feel like just because the people you meet first have to be your new best friends. And that's one thing I was told, but I still, even though I thought about it, didn't really appreciate it until halfway through the first year. Because there were people on my corridor I did get on with, but there were other people that I really didn't. And I had this perception that suddenly everyone was making loads of friends. Thank you, social media. That's the effect it has. Seeing everyone on Facebook posting all these pictures of how much fun they were having at uni. And don't get me wrong, I was having fun. I loved university, but I did feel sometimes that other people were having more fun and they'd made better connections and more friends. And because I felt that I wasn't, I did cling on to the people closest, as in proximity closest to me. And there was nothing wrong with these people. They were lovely. It's just we didn't have that connection. And it wasn't until probably about the December, January time that I found my group of friends that I really got on with. And that happened to be someone that I was on the same course with. And then she introduced me to all of her friends. And we are now all still best friends over 10 years on. But it did take me the first term to find her and all of those close friends. So do not feel pressured that you have to be friends with the first people you meet. Do not panic if you are still 3 months in and you haven't found your best mates yet or people you get along with, because that was me. And I did find them and we are best friends for life now. Now, linked to that point, but also just the fact that you're in such a completely new and overwhelming environment, is do not feel bad if you are upset at times at university. As I said, I absolutely loved university. It was amazing. It was probably the best 3 years of my life. But I also cried an awful lot in first year, and that is just completely normal and it's okay. I found it quite overwhelming at the start that you have gone from, or at least I did, living at home with your family to then living in that bedroom by yourself, fending for yourself in every way. I had a boyfriend that wasn't at university. I had all of my school friends that were at different universities as well. And I started to feel quite detached from everyone, in the sense that I didn't have anyone that I was really good friends with close by, and they all looked like they were just getting on with their lives, having great fun. There were some people on the course that made me feel like I wasn't clever enough, I wasn't the smartest in the year anymore, and dealing with all of that was quite a lot at times. And I did get upset, but at the same time I was also having the time of my life. And that's such a strange concept that I had to deal with, the fact that I was having the best time of my life, but also I was having some really big lows where I just felt like I wasn't happy. So it was a real contradiction. Now that was pretty much just for me in the first year. By the time I did get my really close set of friends, things started to settle down. I started to get used to the different style of teaching, and I then did mainly just enjoy it all the time. But what I'm trying to say is, do not feel like you are a failure or the only one if you are upset when you first get there. And it doesn't mean you won't enjoy uni, doesn't mean it's not for you. It's just natural because it's such a huge change. So crying is normal. Anyone who didn't struggle at the start of university is lying to you, and they are not telling you that because they just don't want to admit they didn't like it at the start. Because I guarantee everyone felt like that to some extent, and it's absolutely fine. One of my top tips would be definitely go to Freshers Fair and join at least one society or club. It's a great way to meet people that maybe aren't living with you, aren't on your course, just to find people that have the same interests as you. So it's a good way to make friends with people with similar hobbies. It's also a really good way to find things to do to relax outside of your studies. And it's really good when you come to apply for jobs after university to be able to show, well, what did you do while you studied other than study and go out with your friends? If you can then show that you did something extra, it's brilliant. So for me, I was part of Food Society. So we learned how to cook different things, go to different restaurants. I was part of the radio station there. So I was one of the producers and presenters on the radio station. And then eventually I also worked at the Student Union bar. So it kind of built up a range of activities. And if you're into sports, there are so many that would be brilliant to take part in. Now, for me, this one was mainly during first year and second year, but I wish I'd really considered the fact that if you get a takeaway most nights between midnight and 3 a.m, you are gonna put on weight. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with putting on weight, but just in hindsight, it doesn't make you feel particularly well. So, a few takeaways in the middle of the night, yes, they are tasty, but don't go over the top because you will start to feel sluggish and ill pretty quickly. As well as that, it is going to hit your bank balance. And that takes me on to the next point. Now, this isn't something that I was guilty of because I am actually very, very careful with money and savings, but I did see people around me making this error. When you are given your maintenance loan, you are given it in a chunk at the start of each term. So you'll be getting a few thousand in your bank account in one go. And that is meant to last you 3 or 4 months. Do not make the mistake that some people did and they went on this wild shopping spree and just spent almost all of their loan in 1 week. And then they realised they didn't have the money to actually live off. So yeah, be careful with that one. Linked to money as well, I really wish before I started uni, I had got myself a student bank account. I just had a standard bank account and the student loans actually came in late for my year because of some issues. But the accommodation fees came out on time. So that meant I didn't have the money in my bank account and my bank actually charged me because I ended up going into my overdraft because the money wasn't there yet. And even though I contacted them and told them the situation, they didn't care. Now, other people had a student bank account. And student bank accounts, you do not get charged if you go into your overdraft. So they didn't get charged and I did. And it was at that point I cancelled that bank card and I opened up a student bank account. And on top of that, not having to pay if you go into your overdraft, you also are offered different incentives by different banks because they want to entice you to join them. So I went with a particular bank that offered the young person's rail card for free for the next 5 years. So I went for that one because I used to get the train back and forth from my university and that saved me loads of money. Others offer just a lump sum of money that they'd put straight into your account. So do some research, get it set up before you start. My final takeaway message for you is relax, enjoy and try new things. It is a huge change to what you'll be used to. It can be overwhelming at times, but it is absolutely amazing. And you will look back on those years and just think about how much fun it was and that you wish you could go back to it. So enjoy it. Good luck. And if you do have any questions about anything, just drop them in the comments below or send me a DM on my Instagram. If you have found this helpful, please give it a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the latest videos.